Okay, Phil, we are trying to close in on this series to discuss some of the titles or all of the titles you've put into your book. You should have heard just what I seen. And you've got your clipography at the back, all the pop music uses in TV and music. That was an awkward way of putting it, but you know what I'm saying. And you've been pairing some up for the last few episodes, and we're going to continue to do that. And as you've pointed out recently, I think we've got 5 episodes left to go. So,
Five to go, unless we might want to decide to do a six. We'll talk about that later, but to clean up, remember I added some stuff right at for a new edition. I
oh,
think
yeah,
4 or 5 songs. We might something we can talk about later.
yeah,
But five
absolutely.
regular ones, yeah.
So, now the interesting thing, and I think this is maybe a result of the fact that uh, you didn't really do the, excuse me, the pairing up sort of idea until later in the process, but we're doing two Tarantino selections, and there obviously could have been a third because I think we already did an episode where we discussed Jackie Brown. But
Yeah,
maybe you paired Jackie Brown with something else too. I can't
oh,
remember. So
I think that was back when we were doing them on their own. So
right, okay.
yeah, Jackie Brown ideally would have been part of this, but that's okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Might
So
make brief mention of it a couple times.
sure. So you're going to so the choices you picked were from the movies Reservoir Dogs, which obviously no surprise. I don't see how you could do a book on this subject without referencing that. And from Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, one of the more recent fare. And you should maybe mention by way of omission, because some people would certainly be wondering, is nothing from Pulp Fiction. I would be there right with you on that. I mean, I've seen Pulp Fiction still only once. I think the weekend it came out. I'll see it again at some point, but honestly, I'm not even that like enthused to see it a second time. I really wasn't a fan of the movie. I did enjoy the soundtrack, hearing it in the record store for, half a year or so. But even that, it right from the get-go just wasn't as of much interest to me as everything in Reservoir Dogs, which was just, completely took me by surprise and threw a whole bunch of songs at me, some new to me, some familiar. But anyway, so you take it over. I think you wanted to start probably with Reservoir Dogs.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I actually bought that Pulp Fiction, the soundtrack on CD for the car, and I played it once. And no, I'm sure I mentioned this in Jackie Brown. The only thing I would have maybe included in Pulp Fiction is Chuck Berry, and it's because of the dance. That was never
Yeah.
one of my favorite Chuck Berry songs. It
Mhm.
worked out great in that scene, but minus Travolta and Uma Thurman, it's just not one of my favorite songs.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so Reservoir Dogs, and I watched it just today, first time probably in a while, because that's one of those films I just worn out. Um, I was trying to remember the circumstances under which I first saw it, and I really don't at all because it came out in '92, I think. Um, so it's a good 2 years. I thought, did I see that when I was at teachers college? Nope, that was '90. It's good 2 years after Goodfellas. So I really don't know uh, how I saw it, who I saw it with, but it was certainly memorable from a musical standpoint. I was thinking of it, as no surprise, say up front, chose Steelers Wheel and Stuck in the Middle with You. The little bit of dialogue I was trying to look up was Steve Wright's description of it in the film.
Mm.
Uh, Here, I
Remember
did
that,
look
yeah.
it up. See how this jives with your memories of hearing it on the radio as a kid. He calls it, oh, when I just took the snatch of dialogue. When they recorded this Dylan-esque pop bubblegum favorite.
Yeah, it's great.
Dylan-esque pop.
Yeah, I love that.
First thing is, when I was a kid, I don't think I was had enough knowledge of Dylan at the time to even pick up on the obvious Dylan imitation in the vocal and Stuck in the Middle with You. Pop bubblegum, definitely pop. I don't know if I ever considered that bubblegum. I don't know.
Yeah,
What do you think?
I can't go back and think what specifically I thought about the song, but I definitely would never have picked up on a Dylan reference. Absolutely. I
Yeah,
wasn't that much into Dylan when I would have been that old. So that would have
right.
gone right over my head. But
You
no,
were even.
I love the Stephen Wright dialogue throughout for sure. It's
Oh,
one of
he's
the great
great.
things about the movie, definitely.
One word he pronounced. I should have copied down. He gives this really odd pronunciation. One word. So that's what I picked for Reservoir Dogs. And I was thinking I didn't follow through. I was going to make up a list of the 10 single most famous uses of pop music in a film, by which I mean songs where you cannot hear the song without thinking of the film. And I was thinking this
Yeah.
might vie for number one with the other one I thought of would be Mrs. Robinson from The Graduate.
Mm.
And I was thinking the top 10. I don't think you could legitimately, for you and I, maybe, and lots of people, I don't think you could put a Scorsese thing in there just for a wider general movie audience, like
Yeah.
My
Well,
Baby's not really hugely famous. Maybe Layla from Goodfellas. I don't know, but I don't
yeah,
think
that
so.
was one I was thinking maybe, but no, maybe not as much. I
I was
mean,
thinking stuff like Tom Cruise and Risky Business, Bob Seger, Shout from Animal House, things like that, where it just reached millions and millions of people now. I don't know if Reservoir Dogs, it didn't make as much money as Animal House or The Graduate, but I think we could say by this point it has reached millions and millions of people.
well, that was going to be my one response to that. I feel that anyone who sort of, follows this kind of stuff, that would be true. But I don't know if Reservoir Dogs itself is quite iconic enough of a movie for that to
Yeah,
qualify. Like
maybe it still
they
falls
placed
short of something like Dirty Dancing, maybe even as
yeah,
much as
yeah. I mean, they play Stuck in the Middle with You a lot on stations like Zoom and stuff still. And I have the feeling there's probably a lot of people who don't associate it with the movie because they don't know the movie. But
you might be right.
I don't know. I mean, that's my
No, I don't
whereas
know.
The Graduate, I wouldn't say that about. I mean, for younger people, yes, but
Yeah,
anyone of a certain vintage, even if you hadn't seen The Graduate, you probably would know that that song is associated with The Graduate. So that I think is a almost inarguable choice. So.
yeah, it's just a theoretical category. I don't know. It'd be impossible to
No,
actually measure that.
I think it's a great selection, but it just that would be the one caveat I'd throw at you maybe. So
So that's the uneventful choice from Reservoir Dogs, but I think it's the unavoidable choice. I think I can honestly say in my own viewing, it's something where I sat there and once that scene ended, um, and I can describe the scene in a second. Once it ended, I just thought that just changed the way I viewed how you could use a pop song in a movie. And was also thinking that um, Tarantino didn't do anything completely new by taking a junky song and using it, um, in a way that there was a real disconnect with what you were seeing on the screen. Because we've talked about Kenneth Anger, talked about Andy Warhol, but I think this is probably the first time it was done in, I don't want to say mainstream, but in a narrative film that played theaters.
mm,
I can't think of another instance. Maybe I didn't think
no,
hard, but a film before this that intentionally took, we're talking about it being Dylan-esque, but it was also a K-Tel song from that era at least, and took that and just completely used it in a subversive manner. You know,
yeah, it's a
I,
good point. Yeah, I can't off the top of my head think of anything, think of a forerunner to that. Everything would have even all of Scorsese's selections were even if they were used kind of in a commentary type way. They were heartfelt selections, of lack of a better
yeah,
way to
he
put it.
was
Like
even when he was
songs
using.
that no one would question if he loved that song. Or I'm not saying it quite right, but you know what I mean. So
I know what you mean. Even when he was using like crazy doo wop, like I'm the Rang Tang Ding Dong, or using a girl group song, he revered that music.
exactly, yeah,
And I know that Tarantino reveres the music that he uses, but it's in a different way, and it's
yeah. That's what it is. There's something
different. Yeah,
just little dips that want to be sedated, sort of ethos brought to life or something. So
yeah. I mean, we wrote about K-Tel 2 or 3 years before Reservoir Dogs came out. When we were writing about it, I don't think we ever thought that it was going to be used in this, talked about independent film.
Yeah,
Uh,
maybe part of the difference, I'll just say this quick, is that with something like the K-Tel era and all those songs, yeah, you can certainly have an affection for them, but you really did, for the most part, probably have to be a certain age and in a certain circumstance. Whereas the stuff that Scorsese used, like, I don't know, by the time I would have seen Mean Streets, I don't think I would have heard a girl group song as being junky. It was just, no, this is like amazing music from the past that I didn't get a chance to hear on the radio. But something like Steeler's Wheel, I think even people younger than that probably heard, like, oh God, the 70s, like, you know what I mean? Like there's just something different about it. So
and we were probably, when we saw Mean Streets, we were probably already in the process of buying over compilations that we, read about the Rolling Stone record.
reading criticism and stuff, and
Yeah.
having a different thing about this stuff altogether.
Um,
Yeah.
Very brief description of this scene, which is so famous. And even tonight, I still had to look away. I
Yeah,
cannot.
it makes me squirm.
It's Mr. Blonde, I believe. Yeah, Michael Masden's character has been left in the warehouse with the cop that they managed to kidnap from the botched robbery. He was in the trunk. His name is Marvin. Marvin, I forgot. I forgot. I watched it like 30 minutes ago, Scott. I forgot his name already. Marvin somebody. And Harvey Keitel and Steve Buscemi, Chris Penn go off to get the diamonds that have been stashed away, and they leave Mr. Blonde, Michael Madsen, who's got this hair trigger. I mean, even Harvey Keitel keeps calling him a psycho. They've left him in charge of the kidnapped cop who's tied to a chair, and Tim Roth, the mole or rat. And we know that, but nobody else knows that yet. And he's laying on the ground dying, and he is full out bent on torturing Michael Madsen just for fun, not with the sorry, Michael Madsen is full out intending to torture the cop, not with the intention of getting information. He doesn't care. He just does it for fun. He's sadistic and he's borderline psychotic, or not even borderline.
Yeah.
So he, first of all, he says, something like, "Do you ever listen to K-Bob Billy? I love K-Bob Billy." Walks over to the radio, turns it on. It's a super sounds of the 70s, and he's in the process of introducing Steeler's Wheel with the introduction I just quoted from. And Michael Madsen, we see him take out a switchblade, and the song starts. And first he does that dance. If you can remember, you said you've only seen it once, Scott. I'm sure you still remember.
No,
it.
Reservoir Dogs I've seen a few times.
Oh, sorry.
Pulp Fiction I've only seen. Reservoir Dogs I've seen at least a handful of times. So
you're right, yeah. So he does his dance, and Marvin's in the chair, and he's kind of squirming. And he takes out a switchblade and he cuts off his right ear. And it's the blackest, darkest humor, because he's holding the ear in his hand. He says, "Hello, can you hear me?" And it's just unbelievable. You don't actually see the ear being cut off, but you see him holding the ear, and the song's playing. And then Tarantino does something kind of neat. Madsen leaves the warehouse to go out and get gasoline from the trunk, and the song stops. It's very realistic. Song stops because it's diegetic. It's not
right.
sound music. It's playing off the portable radio. As soon as he walks back in the warehouse, like it really breaks up the song. There's this 30 seconds of absolute silence, and he walks back in the warehouse. Song picks up, and he starts dousing it with gasoline. And it's got and this was a huge shock the first time I saw it. Even now, it's still kind of a jolt. Just as he's about to set him on fire, shots come out of nowhere, and it's from Tim Roth lying on the ground, and he shoots Michael Madsen dead. And it's just absolutely incredible.
Yeah.
The way that song is used, the imagination it took, and the first two lines of the song are so perfect, because it's "Don't know why I came here tonight. I got the feeling something ain't right, or something."
Yeah, something ain't right. Yeah.
But I was also thinking, as much as that song turned me around, there had already been two great uses of music in the film, so it wasn't completely out of left field. I think there are four phenomenal uses of music in that film, and I could have picked any one of them. First of all, there's George Baker's selection over the
Yeah.
credits. And you get the famous setup scene of them in the restaurant. Actually, for some reason, when I sat down to watch it tonight, I was seeing it started with Harvey Keitel and Tim Roth, bleeding to death in the car. But of course, it starts with their conversation about like Virgin and tipping and all of that. And then the credits come up. So against the credits, we hear K-Bob Billy, sorry, for the first time. And then you get George Baker's selection, a song I never liked until Reservoir Dogs, and now I love it. I did not like that on the radio as a kid,
Mhm.
and George Baker went on to do the polka song.
Paloma Blanca. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't even know what George Baker's selection, where they're from, what they look like. I mean, I have no
Yeah.
visual idea of what they look like, but I've come because of Reservoir Dogs to love Little Green Bag. And it's done with the whole crew walking along in stop motion, kind of in their suits, mimicking, if you've ever seen, not mimicking. Tarantino doesn't know about this, but it's such an amazing coincidence. Trudeau walking with his cabinet in
Oh,
60.
really?
Oh, if you haven't seen that photo, I gotta
Wow.
send it to you. Just look like they look exactly like the well, sunglasses on,
Wow.
suits, look just like the Reservoir Dogs crew. So that was the first instance in the film, and then the other one that comes before Steelers Wheel that I think is just incredible is Blue Suede with Hooked on a Feeling,
Hooked on a feeling. Yeah.
which is uh, Harvey Keitel picking up Tim Roth, and they're in the car just ready to leave, I think, for their first meeting with Joe and his son, Chris Penn, and the rest of the crew, kind of an introductory meeting. But we get two cops. We don't see them. They're in their car. And the one cop says to the other one, he says something like, man, that guy's got to have nerves of steel, whenever you go undercover and thinking about the people he's getting involved with. And then that car pulls away. And that's where Blue Suede just fills the soundtrack. And I think that song too, as a kid, I mean, I liked the BJ Thomas, but I think I considered that song kind of embarrassing because of the beginning, the Ooga Shakas. It was just so bizarre and silly on the radio. And again, that song turned me into the film turned me into such a fan of the song.
Yeah.
So the point I'm making is that as out of the blue as the whole Steelers Wheel song came, it didn't come completely out of the blue because he'd already pulled it off twice in the film.
Yeah.
And then the fourth one for me would be Coconut over the closing credits, which is just
Gotta forget
incredible
about that one. Yeah.
because you have them right at the end. Finally, you have the great, I think, an imitation in the original where you've got the three of them pointing the gun, or it might be an imitation of some French film. The three of them pointing the guns at each other, and they all shoot each other dead. So, not dead. Keitel manages to survive, but the two of them are dead. They all shoot at the same time. They all fall, and Steve Buscemi walks away with the money. Keitel's not dead. He ends up crawling over to Tim Roth, and that's where Tim Roth lets him know that, yeah, I'm a cop. I was the guy.
Mm.
And Keitel is so, he's barely alive, and you can tell he's distraught and crying and ready to scream, and he wants to pull the trigger and kill Tim Roth. But then we hear out of view, the cops come into the warehouse. They shoot Keitel. He literally falls out of frame. So you had a blank, blurry frame, and you cut right to the credits, and Harry Nielsen starts up. It's just amazing.
Wow.
I thought how tricky that song probably is today in terms of how it would be perceived because, with the broad accents, I mean,
Yeah.
you don't want to say it's blackface, but it's like the New York Dolls when they do there's going to be not there's going to be a showdown when they do Stranded in the Jungle.
Yeah.
It's really something you could do without blinking in 1974, 1972 for Harry Nielsen.
Mhm.
That probably wouldn't go over too well today. I think it's an
Yeah.
incredible song, but I'm aware that, yeah, wow. Um, so, any one of those four I could have chosen. I've got the soundtrack up on a tab here. There was a country song where Tim Roth is alone in his apartment. And I actually thought, wow, is that Dolly Parton? I think that every time, but it's not. It's oh, I had it here. I think it's somebody called Sandy Rogers, Fool for Love. You remember the song I'm thinking about?
I see it listed on the soundtrack. I don't remember though. No, I don't remember it.
Yeah, okay. And it is that because they've got descriptions of where these songs happen. And it says Orange prepares to leave his apartment. He's just leaving it, they're waiting for him downstairs, Chris Penn and Harvey Keitel. And he's just kind of getting his stuff together. And then he gives himself a pep talk in the mirror at the last minute, like, don't lose your nerve. They don't know who you are. They don't know anything about you. You're Beretta. You can get away with it. You can pull this off. And there's this really great country song playing.
Oh,
That's
I'll
what
have
it
to
is.
re-listen to that. Yeah, I don't remember that.
The other prominent use is probably Joe Tex with I Gotcha. And it's good. I was never crazy about I Gotcha. It's where they bring the cop back to the warehouse and, they throw him on the ground. They start kicking, beating him up, and Joe Tex is playing. It's good. It works in
Hmm.
the film. But I didn't think twice about choosing Steelers Wheel for the book. And I didn't even write about it. I just think I quoted K. Bob Billy.
Hmm.
It's one of
Yeah,
those things so famous, you don't really need to write
yeah.
about it. If I had written a whole essay, I certainly would have gone into detail, but I think everybody knows the scene, and it's gone down in history. And I think it did change. Just think of how much of that approach to pop music has taken hold in movies and TV since,
Yeah.
where they purposefully seek out something previously thought of as really junky and use it in a context you never would expect, and you have to rethink the song. I should have, if I if I'd done due diligence, I would have copied down 10 prominent Tarantino imitations, but they're everywhere.
Yeah.
Maybe not as much now. I mean, it was a huge thing for a while, and probably you see it more on TV now. So
Yeah. Yeah. That's what I was
you
thinking.
see it in a lot of animated films too, right?
Hmm. Yeah.
Where they almost take a Tarantino approach to the soundtrack
Yeah.
in a Disney film or a Pixar film, probably
Yeah.
more like.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah.
Jerry Rafferty just died. I
Oh, I
think.
didn't hear that.
think so. I
Really?
think so. Maybe I'm wrong.
Oh no, maybe yeah, maybe I did hear. Oh my
He
God,
did.
I always lose track of who's died when, unless it's someone who really meant a lot to me. But yeah, I think you might be right. I think it was within the last year or something like that.
Yeah.
I
And I
remember,
think,
yeah.
as we mentioned, probably in the Mindhunter podcast, we have to make note that Jerry Rafferty went from KTEL fame to Ronco fame with Baker Street. Released one of the definitive Ronco songs, and I believe it was used in Mindhunter and used very
Oh
well.
wow.
So
So
he covered both ends of that, like nobody else really.
so listen, I got to mention just because otherwise we'll have embarrassed ourselves to anyone who's watching. But I just looked at Jerry Rafferty because I wanted to make sure he is indeed passed away, but in 2011. I don't know why. Like you mentioning that he died recently made me think,
I
yeah,
know.
maybe you're. I think I did hear that. It's like, no,
I'm telling you, the deaths come so fast.
no,
Just
I know. I can't keep track of them. Right? Like,
we won't
what?
go off track here, but did you see who died today?
No, I don't
I
think
just
so.
found out like an hour ago. Melanie.
Oh, really?
Yeah, brand
Oh,
new key.
wow. Did you
Yeah.
have Brand New Key in the book
Yeah.
for book? Well, you
No,
probably mentioned it for Boogie Nights, I guess,
no,
right? But you
definitely
didn't choose it.
no. I chose for Boogie Nights. I chose Walter Regan, but
Right, right.
yeah, and
Wow.
lay down candles in the rain. And the other thing that I forgot, we're a little off track here, but look what they've done to my song.
Wow.
Do you remember that?
I remember the title. I might know it. What year
Okay,
would that one have been?
same time, 70, 71. It's
Yeah,
great.
it's a little before my time on the radio, but it does have I
Uh,
have a dim memory of it, I think. So
it's a great song, and I found a great clip of her duetting on it with Miley Cyrus of all people.
wow. Oh, I did
Yeah,
not hear that she had passed away. Wow.
76. So yeah, I didn't realize Jerry Baker was that long ago, but again, COVID also.
Jerry Rafferty. You
Wow.
call him Jerry Baker.
Oh
Jerry
man,
Baker, who lives on Rafferty Street.
that would have been one of the great malapropisms for the show. So I
Yeah.
should have left that. Okay, so Reservoir Dogs. Film didn't hit me as hard tonight because it's yeah, the things that jolt you and surprise you can never do that as forcefully again. But I still think it's a much better film than Pulp Fiction. For me, it kind of goes Jackie Brown at the top, Reservoir Dogs next, and then probably the film we're going to talk about next. And that's it, really, for me for Tarantino. I've had issues and problems with every other film, Pulp Fiction included, which I think is half great.
Yeah, I was thinking just before we talk, and I'll make this quick because we don't have tons and tons of time, but
Okay.
I was looking quickly at Tarantino's filmography, and I do realize kind of in the taking a longer view. I mean, I feel like I've enjoyed a lot of his movies when I've seen them, but not very many stick with me, including Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. I found it enjoyable watching it, but I find it was enjoyable in a, oh, this is actually better than I thought it would be kind of way. But honestly, I don't think I've thought about the movie since I've seen it. So carry on with that one.
Okay, so that would be the next one. What time? How much time are we looking at, Scott?
I'm not seeing it hasn't 10 minute.
29. Okay, we'll see. Um, watch it again, and you just summed up the way I felt the first time. When I watch it now, and especially, I've seen I think probably 4 or 5 times altogether. When I watched it yesterday, I actually find parts of it more moving than when I watched it the first time. I've really keyed in on the fact of how personal it is to Tarantino and that he sincerely, it's like this, forlorn kind of Valentine to this era that he wasn't, this moment in time he wasn't part of, that he is as nostalgic for as, I can get about 1972 or, maybe you get about 79 or something like that. And until he just hates the film was born out of his hatred for Manson for taking that moment away from him. And there are just parts of the film I found moving that where he really does get at something. And including the song that I chose and how it's used, which was Buffy Sainte-Marie's version of the Circle Game. And I meant to do some research on its relation to Joni Mitchell's original. I think it is accurate to use that because it was a hit before it ever turned up on Tom Rush covered it, but I think that comes later, and Joni Mitchell put it on her first or second album, and that comes later. So I think it was the first public encounter with the song. Buffy Sainte-Marie, yeah, we could spend, I guess, 20 minutes talking about her travails this past year. But she does a great job on it. And it's so nice the way it's used in the film because it's just Sharon Tate driving along. There's a lot of driving once upon a time in Hollywood. And it's where she picks up the hitchhiker, the Manson-esque hitchhiker, but I don't think it's actually one of Manson's women. She talks like one of Manson's women. At one point, she says something, and you think, oh, wow, she could have wandered off Spawn Ranch. But it's just, I think it's playing before she picks her up, and it just captures Sharon Tate out on her own, just driving. And it's a really nice moment, and it's moving. And other parts of the film that moved me, the ending moved me tonight, which was strange because not all the violent stuff, but the fact that yeah, he got to rewrite history, and then where Leonardo DiCaprio wanders down from his house after all the carnage has happened, and Jay Sebring calls out to him and says, "Hey, you're oh, what's the character's name? Not Cliff. I can't even think of his character's name. Um, Rick Dalton. You're Rick Dalton."
Right.
And suddenly Jay Sebring is a fan of his, and Sharon Tate knows who he is, and she invites him up, and everything is well again. Sharon Tate wasn't murdered. None of this happened. And it's kind of corny and it's kind of self-serving, but I actually found it moving, believe it or not.
Mm.
So I know what you're saying. That's pretty much how I felt the first time. But that aspect of the film has improved for me. It's not a perfect film by any means. Um, that song came out while I was writing the book, and I just sort of on the spot wrote about it, wrote the essay in there, and I felt, yeah, I can justify using that in the discography. I think it's worthwhile. There's no other, I don't, oh, the other, and I singled out in the essay, the other musical um, moment that I loved was use of Neil Diamond's Hot August Night, which
On
was
August Night, is that a song?
no, it's not. It quotes, it's a lyric. It's Brother Love's Traveling
Right.
Salvation. Right, thank you. Hot August Night is the name of his live double.
Live album, yeah.
Um, and that's used in a way that clearly is meant to foreshadow Manson because it's got the great line about, Hot August Night and the murders happened in August, I think, August 8th. Or did they have,
It
yeah,
was August, yeah, I don't
it was
remember the date,
August,
but
yeah.
yeah.
Um, that's great too. And actually, I didn't even mind tonight. I thought it was kind of corny the first time, but for whatever reason, it worked for me when I watched it yesterday. Is just as the Manson car rolls up the night of the murders, the mamas and the papas, young girls of the canyon is playing,
Hmm.
which was obviously meant to pay tribute to all the, young teenagers who were converging on Topanga Canyon at the time, but also stands in as kind of a song about the Manson, all the females that Manson collected for his crazy thing.
And you didn't have you didn't get anything from the Stones song Out of Time?
Yeah, they used Out of Time to, it's funny because it
Because
had
that's
to be.
kind of a big, that's kind of a, isn't that almost like one of the songs in the movie where he's clearly trying to do something really grandiose with the music? Or
I was trying to think. I noticed it tonight. I think it was used at the airport, actually.
yeah,
Maybe,
yeah.
maybe when he was coming, maybe when he was coming back from Rome. And again, it's been used to foreshadow what's about to happen, I guess. And you know what? It's funny when I heard it yesterday. I thought, is that the original or is that Chris Farlow? I don't know why. It's something about the orchestral introduction or something.
That song has a couple of different versions, even that
Okay,
were
so I was
around at the
hearing a
time. So I think it is the Stones version, but it's
yeah.
I think it was maybe I don't know. I think it's one of the ones that maybe wasn't as popular in North America. I'm not sure. It was
No,
recorded
I
a
think you're
couple of
right.
different times. So
I think you're right because I thought there was a little bit of an orchestral intro. No, I like that. I liked Jose Feliciano's cover of California Dreamin', which was, very Jose Feliciano and was used, I think, just as they're driving around Sunset Strip, which was kind of the whole uh, sequence was a tribute to all the incredible marquees, kind of like the Aloha Bobby Rose, but they were theater marquees, not billboards.
hmm.
Um, Oh, and the other thing, and I also have the soundtrack up. There is some good kind of almost like rock soul that's used throughout the film. It's not my favorite type of 60s. It's almost a genre unto itself, but it works out well. And the one scene I loved, and again, I found it moving. It captures. It captures his desire to want it to be part of this, and who wouldn't want to have been part of this? It's the scene where they arrive at the Playboy Mansion and Sharon Tate and Michelle Phillips run onto they're running towards the dance floor and Cass Elliot appears and drags them over to the dance floor. And there's one of those rock and soul songs playing. That's a great moment too. Um, and, we don't know. I mean, it's great. And then again, you have to consider all the creepy stuff about Hefner and everything that was going on. So you're aware of that, but it's just something about it captures something.
Yeah, a
I just
moment.
read Richard Brody really tore into the film. I just reread that in the New
Oh, did
Yorker.
he?
Yeah, for being this basically this white male version of this, era that just wasn't how he presents it, or
Hmm.
or should not be so bemoaned because there was a lot of great
Yeah.
stuff going on.
I've never been a huge fan of Richard Brody, but that's
It's really, yeah, he's
subject
really,
for a different day, probably. But
I know he's very hit or miss for me. And sometimes he'll come along and he'll praise a film that I like. He went crazy about the last couple, or at least the last Anderson film. I'm thinking, well, God, well, I don't get that at all.
yeah, yeah,
So, I love Brad Pitt in the film. I had to check tonight. I was very glad to see that he did win Best Supporting Actor. It's just a great character. Um, there's lots of music that's, I think we've talked about it. This just really misses the mark, like using Vanilla Fudge is god awful. You keep me hanging on for
yeah.
that.
Terrible.
Either have no music or pick something that goes along with how, just awful and what a landmark, horrible event that was.
Yeah,
If you feel you have to use music, get something that I don't want to say lives up to it, but you know what I mean, right?
yeah,
Uh, and there's other stuff in the film that just falls flat for me. I think
yeah.
he uses sort of a couple of really, I might use a really overplayed Aretha Franklin song at one point. I think he does early in the film. And I got into this whole thing on the message board, like about he wanted to make it sound like a real playlist from this really well-known LA station. He wanted it to be accurate to the moment, and I get that. But at the same time, he could have used stuff that I'm certain they would have been playing. And I think I mentioned to you at the time, not using things like maybe Sugar Sugar or Crimson and Clover. And
Yeah,
I should check the timeline. Maybe those songs came out after the film. But it seems like if you want to really represent that moment, you're going to have to include, or you should include, a couple of songs like that. Dizzy, maybe, you know.
yeah. I guess I mean, maybe it's like I don't know what the station was, but maybe it's like Freeform FM, and maybe they steer clear of that
Maybe,
more
yeah, they might have
bubblegummy
had it. You're
stuff.
right.
But
It wasn't an FM. It was a famous AM
oh,
station.
okay, well then, yeah. I mean, it's
But
like he gravitated towards junk like he often does, but it's definitely the kind of junk that I just don't care about. Like it's not fun
right,
junk or
and
something. Or
he used two or three, at least a couple of Paul Revere songs. But there's other great Paul Revere songs he could have used.
yeah.
Wasn't crazy about the two that he used.
So I think
Uh,
we're down to 30 seconds if you
oh, okay.
uh,
That's really probably all I need to say, Scott. I could ramble on, but I think that's good.
okay. No, that was good.
We're
Well,
plowing through this, getting it
yeah,
done.
no, it's good.
Okay.
We'll do it again soon. I don't know what's next on the list, but we'll
Try
get
for
there.
next week, and we'll do another one, and we'll knock them off.
Sounds good, Phil.
Okay. Take care, Scott.
Talk to you later.
Bye
Bye
bye.
bye.